So this week in Daniel chapter 1, we see Daniel in his first real test in the Babylonian court. So we see him and his three friends come into the court. They've gone through 3 years of preparations, education. They learned about Babylonian writing, culture, Babylonian history. And so after being indoctrinated for 3 years, assimilated, now Daniel is ready to enter into the service of the Babylonian court. And what I love about this chapter is here Daniel and his friends are Hebrew exiles, and yet the king, when he does the interview at the end of the chapter, he interviews all of these who went through the special training, and he finds them 10 times better than any of the other men. So a testament to God's blessing on Daniel, but also to Daniel's own character. There's a lot of character traits that he displays, even just in chapter 1. We're going to talk about some of those tonight. So the first one we read in verse 8. So it says, Daniel resolved. Now, your Bibles, depending on the translation, it may say he purposed in his heart, or it may say he decided, or he was determined, or he made up his mind. And so when we think about how to apply Daniel to our lives, we're going to go through a lot of these character traits and figure out how to make this practical for us. So this is the first practical thing we find is Daniel resolved. And so he was, think about what he resolved in verse 8. So verse 8, let's read that here. So verse 8 says, Daniel decided not to make himself unclean by eating the king's food and drinking his wine. So right off the bat, we see Daniel and his friends get renamed. Babylonian names that honor Babylonian gods. And so Daniel was okay with that. But when it comes to food, no, he drew the line. And so I want you to think about in your life as a Christian in America today, where do you draw the line? What cultural practices do you draw the line at? And so we're going to do breakout rooms first this time. So I'll put everybody in a breakout room, and I want you to take 5 minutes and talk about it in your group. Again, have a scribe, somebody who's willing to write down the collective answers, and then we'll hear each group's thoughts from the scribe after. So give yourself 5 minutes, have a timekeeper. I want to hear, as a Christian in America, what is something you've drawn the line on? To help you get started, maybe I shouldn't just throw you in the deep end. Think about what Steve Tandy always used to say. He used to say that people know you're a Christian because you don't drink, you don't smoke, and you don't cuss. Does anybody remember that? I heard him say that a dozen times. And that's always kind of stuck with me. And it's true. You see somebody who does that, and you're like, oh, they're different. All right, what do you do? Where do you draw the line? And I will start breakout rooms here in just a sec. So for those of you who are new to Zoom and haven't done breakout rooms before, you'll get a message on your window, and it will tell you, it'll give you a button to click on to go to your breakout room. And then when you're done, you'll be able to click a button and come back to this big meeting. Okay. All right, 5 minutes. Have fun discussing. All right, I am very curious to hear the conversations that you guys had. So if we can have the scribes from each group speak up and tell me some of the thoughts that were shared about where do you draw the line. So I'll have a volunteer go first. Don't everybody go at once.
I'll talk, Sam. In our breakout room, we talked about, we personally draw the line culturally at using God's name in vain, or laughing at, jokes, or, I saw a Jesus costume for Halloween recently, and it just broke my heart. So there's a cultural insensitivity to the holiness of God. And so that's where we draw the line, and others had drawn the line at the friends that they associate with, particularly in relationship to one of their daughters, and the daughter even recognizing those, culturally drawing that line, which was really encouraging that she has that kind of teaching at home. And then also politically, drawing the line politically in your voting, and the candidates that you support.
Okay, very good thoughts. Thank you so much. All right.
We had, Sam, we had a couple of different things to go along with your language. Also, your choices of media. It's all, there's a lot of stuff on the media now that you can't really even be a part of, or really even, I know people that don't even do social media at all. Also, another one said the music that you listen to, movies. It's very, very hard to find a movie. One of our ladies said, you'd have to kind of go back to watching Gomer Pyle and Andy Griffith to actually be able to watch something that you could watch with your children. And then another thing that I think was really important that was brought up was that when someone, if you're in a situation, let's say that someone lies to you, or that, someone is caught in some really difficult thing, that instead of just ignoring that and just kind of moving on, to actually stand up scripturally and say why you don't condone that, and actually, advocate for what your belief is. So I thought that was a really good one.
Yes, all of those. Thank you so much. Yes, media and social media are increasingly harder to be involved in, aren't they? Okay, another group?
Yes, they are.
A lot of ours are the same. We some of our group have small children, and they watch what they say, so they can say, you may not say these words. And so they are hearing them in their different places, but they are being taught at home that they may not say those things. Respect is needing to be taught. I think that's a line we all must draw, and we see it all around us today, a lack of respect for anybody that's not me, or authority in any fashion. Respect is missing. One mentioned a destruction of property, teaching a child, you may not destroy property that is not yours. If it is mine, do I have a right to destroy your property, like a toy or something like that? So that children need to be taught that respect, again, must be in place, and destruction of property is not okay. And we did say abortion as a very strict line that has been drawn. So we cannot condone that. And we went into shows we watched, the media, music, and so a lot of our answers were the same. So
thank you very much, Norma. I think we have 2 more groups to go. 1 more group. Do we have enough? Carrie?
Yeah, it is me.
Awesome.
Our answers were very much the same as what we had talked about before. I think especially was taking the Lord's name in vain, and being irreverent with things of God. That was something that none of us wanted to participate in and tolerate, and just in hopes of reestablishing that reverence again. And a lot of the media, books and movies and the things that our mind consumes, other people watch us consume those things, and that will set a precedence of what they see us tolerate. We also mentioned kindnesses and not reserving those for just a select to have that compromise our kindnesses. Yeah, I think that's all that we mentioned, but it's a lot that was being said in other groups.
Thank you, Carrie, very much. Do we have any other scribes that were missed?
Yes.
Okay.
I think probably the last one.
Okay.
We had a few things that we talked about. Gossip was something that we talked about, and making sure that we were holding each other accountable for the way we speak to each other. We talked a lot about our actions and how our actions sometimes speak louder than words, but also when someone asks why we are not doing something or abstaining from something, we need to be ready with an answer. And sometimes that's not easy, but that's the way that we're going to minister to others, is by, being ready with an answer. Dirty jokes and cussing and drinking and smoking are some of the other things that we talked about. Making sure that we are acknowledging and being thankful for things that other people do for us that are kind of out of their way, and making sure that we're acknowledging those things out loud.
Fantastic. Very good list. I like how you brought up the being thankful, because that kind of piggybacks off of what Norma said about, we're in a very self-centered culture at the moment. And so for people to reach out and show gratitude is different. It can be very different. So, and just like Daniel probably stood out too. I mean, for one, being a Hebrew in a Babylonian court, but for two, now drawing the line and not eating with them at the table, not eating the same foods. I mean, he definitely stood out, but we can see in chapter 1 how God blessed him, and it even led the king to acknowledge God in chapter 2. So people notice. You guys are all absolutely right. People notice when we're different like this. So if you would like to open up an internet browser and do this on your own, that's great. If you'd rather watch me do it, I'll share the screen. But if you want to do it on your own, we are going to blueletterbible.org, and that link is in the chat. So if you find the chat near where you mute, you can see the link. So I'm headed to Blue Letter Bible, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. There we go. Okay, so if you are watching my screen, you'll see that I'm at blueletterbible.org. Can everybody see that on my screen? If you're looking, nod your heads, give me a thumbs up. Okay, good deal. All right, so I love blueletterbible.org. Excuse me, it's a free site, and it's Strong's Concordance online. So we've used it the first 2 weeks of class. Take a look at Blue Letter Bible. On the upper right, you'll see there is a search bar, so you can type in any scripture you want. If you have multiple scriptures you want to compare, there's a box down here for multiple verse retrieval. I'm going to search for Daniel 1:15. You can tell I've already done it. I'm going to pick that. I'd prefer not to read in the King James Version at the moment. I'm going to pick NIV just for simplicity. And I'm going to click search. So if you're doing this on your own, you'll get a long list of every individual verse in the chapter, and it will highlight the verse that you just specifically searched for. So I searched for Daniel 1:15, which says, at the end of the 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. Okay, there's a reason I'm focusing on this. This is going to illustrate another thing we need to be purposeful about while we're in exile. So follow along. What does it mean to be better nourished? So when you hear better nourished, what do you think of? I mean, we live in kind of a health crazed culture as it is. So you probably have your own image of what it looks like to be better nourished. Now, people typically think that being well nourished means you are not obese, you are not fat. Think about there's actually books on the market called the Daniel Fast or the Daniel Diet, or Rick Warren has a very popular one called the Daniel Plan. And those books are loosely based off of this scripture right here that says, you know, they ate vegetables and they looked better nourished. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. There is nothing wrong with following health plans, food plans, diet plans. That's really good for some people, especially. And that's not what I want to focus on. I don't want to focus on the diet itself. I'm going to look at what does it mean to be better nourished, because there's a reason I've brought you to this site. If we want to learn what is the Hebrew word that or phrase that means better nourished, this is where we go. And over on the left, you see there's a button called Tools. Click on Interlinear, and it pops up with this verse, word by word or phrase by phrase. And it shows you, since this is Old Testament, this is showing Hebrew right here. And so it says, at the end of 10 days, their appearance seemed better, and they were what? They were
fatter.
What? Okay, so and they were fatter is a phrase. Okay, here, oh shoot, when I shared, I didn't share my sound, so you won't be able to hear what it sounds like. But if you're doing this on your own, you click this little audio button and it pronounces it for you. What I'm going to do is click on the Strong's number right here, H1277. So this word is pronounced bari, but with a rolling R, but I can't roll my R's. I need to practice that. Bari, and what it means is literally right here. You can see my cursor right here, outline of biblical usage, number 1, fat.
Oh.
That's what I said too. I said, what? Huh? And if you look, okay, if you scroll down, now you'll see all of the other uses of this exact phrase throughout the Old Testament, at least, because we're in. Okay, so it's in Genesis 41. Okay, when out of the river there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat. Pharaoh's dream. Huh. So that same word, sleek and fat, bari in Hebrew, that's what that means. It's used in that situation too, for Pharaoh's dreams, not just the dream about the cows, but the dream about the grain. Yeah, so if you go down to the next few occurrences, Pharaoh, fell asleep again and had a second dream, 7 heads of grain, healthy and good. But again, it uses that same phrase, and they were fatter. Okay, you're going to love this next one. All right, Judges chapter 3, verse 17. If you remember this story, you'll know that King Eglon of Moab was a very fat man. So much so, it says that the judge Ehud, when he went in to kill him, his sword which was 16, I'm sorry, it was a cubit long, so it was 18 inches long. He stuck that sword in the king's belly, and his hand went in, like, in the folds of fat. That's how obese that this king was. And the same word is used as the same word in Daniel to say better nourished. Why? Okay, why? Why is this? So if you keep scrolling down, here's Daniel right here. Is better nourished. Why is this? Think about what life was like in the Old Testament. Think about the famines that used to regularly occur. Think about how most of the people lived on subsistence farming. And if there was a famine, people had to travel to Egypt to get grain, right? We remember Joseph's story. And so in ancient times, being fat was their version of healthy, completely backwards from us. And so when we see this in Daniel, we notice that the word fat is used in a good way. They're better nourished than all of the others. So, in contrast, all of the other men who were there being trained, like Daniel and his friends, they would have been gaunt. Think of Pharaoh and the cows, right? One was gaunt, skinny and gaunt, versus the fat and healthy one. So what they're saying in Daniel 1:15 is that he looked fatter, and in their definition, healthier. So it cracks me up to no end that we have books on the market in our Christian culture that are called the Daniel diet, because it's completely opposite of anyway. So, I think we're kind of on a roll here. Every one of these Zoom videos we've done is a word that means the opposite in our culture than what it does in the Bible. Have you noticed that? Like, the first word was apocalypse. The next word was, or phrase was, the day of the Lord. And now we've got better nourished, which is fat. So Daniel is full of surprises here. I think it's going to test our perception of what we think things really are. But what this really illustrates, if you take this to the next level, is again, it's not that these diets are wrong. In fact, the Rick Warren Daniel plan, like, he did that with the Saddleback Church, and there were medical professionals as part of that, and people got in groups and worked together on that. I mean, and then he had a Sunday sermon where he reported how many pounds everybody collectively lost. I mean, it was for our society, it was very good for them to shed the extra weight, to get healthy, to be active. So that's good. That's good. But what this illustrates is that sometimes things sound like they're from the Bible, but they're really not. Because even with Rick Warren's Daniel plan, it kind of stops there with the Daniel connection. It's like Daniel in name only. A couple years ago, I actually bought one because I was curious. And that's about the only connection, is the name. And so, people who do not read thoroughly in the Bible, who know just a little bit here and there, but don't actually take time to read it and study it, they would walk through Barnes and Noble and look at this on the shelf and think, oh man, that's based on Daniel's real life, right? Not that it's deceptive, it's just that it takes some study here. Daniel resolved to not defile himself with the food because he knew the Levitical food laws. All the Jews knew the laws. And sometimes, at least in our modern American society, Bible literacy is going down a bit. There have been a few pretty prominent studies, like by Pew Research Center. They did one back in 2010 and a couple others since. But the Bible is not taught in schools anymore. So that leaves learning it at home or learning it at church. And so if you don't have your own motivation to study, then what? I mean, not to say that these books will lead you astray. They will lead you to a healthier life for sure, because you'll be eating lots of good vegetables and beans and pulses and grains and breads and fruits and vegetables. I mean, that's not the problem. The problem is if you don't know the word, you will hear something that you think is in there, but it's not. Does that make sense? Okay. So, because I know that you all read and study the word, I have a quiz. I have a quiz. And let me pull it up here. My quiz is called In the Bible, and I want you to pick which of these things is not in the Bible. You can make as many choices as you want. So, which of these things are not in the Bible? Make your selections now. There's nine or 10 choices here. I'm on pins and needles. What do you think? What do you think? Okay, over half have voted now. Oh man, some of these are hard. So which of these are not in the Bible? Okay, looks like we have one more vote coming in. All right, aha, we're done. Oh, you guys. I'm so proud of you. Okay. I'm going to share results and then take a screenshot of the results. Okay. Which of these are not in the Bible? This was a trick question. Do you know why? None of those are in the Bible at all. Not one. Not one. The hard part is some of them are phrased very closely to a verse, but it's not the actual verse, or it flips it around. Eve ate a fruit, but the Bible doesn't tell us which one, right? It says there were wise men, but it does not name them, nor does it count them. There was no Balthazar. I'm sorry. Although I think that's a really cool name. A whale swallowed Jonah. A big fish. A big fish. Money is the root of all evil. You guys know that one. It's everybody together. The love of money. Yeah. This too shall pass. I hear that in the voice of Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. Although he said, none shall pass. Brian corrected me on that last night. But this too shall pass. Not in the Bible. God works in mysterious ways. That's not in the Bible. For real. Okay. Love the sinner, hate the sin. That is a really popular saying. Not in the Bible. Okay. God will not give you more than you can handle. I used to hear this a lot back when I was first diagnosed with RA. That was not really helpful. It's not helpful. God helps those who help themselves. Does he? I think God helps everybody. Anyway, I hope this was fun and hopefully not infuriating for you.
What are the red ones?
Those are the poll winners. So
whatever. Okay.
Yeah, so those are the highest percentages that are not in the Bible.
Okay.
So the lowest, so really we should be concerned with the lowest percentages here. So love the sinner, hate the sin. Not in there. Not in there. Okay, that was fun. So again, I just wanted to illustrate that our Christian culture even, which disappoints me to no end, but even our Christian culture has things that sound like they're from the Bible, but are not. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to do this Daniel study, is because if you go on YouTube and you search for Daniel, like anything about the book of Daniel, there's all kinds of crazy things that are not necessarily rooted in the Bible. And so as we're here living in our own exile, we've got to study ourselves. We can't just let other people tell us what to think, including me. So don't take my word for it. I'll be like LeVar. Remember, you guys remember reading Rainbow? He's like, don't take my word for it. I love that. Okay, so to wrap up, study to show yourself approved. You've got to know what's in there. And the more that you know, the more that you're going to spot in our culture that's just ever so slightly off. And you'll know. And the other point is, keep thinking about where you draw the line. What is your line in our culture, our American culture today? You've just got to put your line in the sand for certain things. So keep thinking about this week. Next week will be chapter 2. We get to talk about the big statue, and there's a lot more to it than it just being a statue. So I'll have a video out for you by tomorrow evening, and I'll have this recording posted tomorrow evening. For those of you who mentioned you needed the previous lessons and videos, I'll have those out to you tonight over email. So next week, read Daniel chapter 2. I'm so glad you guys were here tonight. It was good to see you. I'll stick around for questions if you have any, but otherwise, have a great week. I'll see you next week.
Sam, I had a question, and it's not necessarily from your video, but I've wondered why Daniel, we keep hearing Daniel is Daniel's name, although his was changed also.
Yeah.
But the other three go by their Babylonian.
Isn't that just fascinating?
Yeah, I've always wondered that.
I think probably because, and this is speculation, we don't know for sure, but Daniel is most likely the author or one of the authors of the book. And so, you know, in the first person narratives, I mean, he's telling his story.
And he's not going to accept that. I see. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And when it gets to the Aramaic chapters, it switches to Rack, Shack, and Benny, as the kids call them.
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody watch the VeggieTales version?
Yes, many moons ago.
Yeah, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And we'll see that, especially in chapter 2. And then chapter 3 is the fiery furnace, and they're referred to by that Babylonian name. The king in chapter 2 calls Daniel Belteshazzar.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's addressed that way.
Right.
But as far as like when he tells the story, it's Daniel.
Right.
That's
Gotcha.
a good observation. Mm-hmm.
Works in a mysterious way. We sing that song.
I love that song.
Take a look. It's in our book. Reading Rainbow.
It's so musical. I love it.
Love it.
You know, I almost wanted to sing, I am resolved no longer
To linger.
Yeah. It's a good song.
It is a great song.
I'll link in the email.
Oh.
Cool.
Did Remy have more questions?
Oh, yes, Remy. Did you leave already?
She's gone.
We must have.
Okay, I'm here.
Okay.
Oh. There's just two that I just like when I read, maybe it's just in an NIV, it says, how do you pronounce it? Jehoiakim?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you got it. Yeah.
Yeah. It says the Lord in verse 2, the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into Nebuchadnezzar's hand. So he allowed it. Right?
He did. Yes. That was the punishment from, that was the punishment back from Deuteronomy 27 and 28. where Moses warned the people, if you do not follow me, you'll be taken into exile. And then we read about it in Isaiah chapter 13 too. And so, yeah, the Lord allowed it to happen, which is kind of a scary thought.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you. And the one that just, the second question is about what they ate. It says they, I think it's on 11, the guard, they were appointed on what they're going to be eating, but they said no. And just give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then after 10 days, they look healthier. And so the guard gave them no wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables instead. Okay, my question is, did they just eat vegetables? Is this more kosher?
So there's several answers to this. Number one is you have to look at the Hebrew word for vegetables because it's not just carrot sticks. And so let me see, I have it written here. So the Hebrew word that's used there for vegetables is actually the word for seed, which means pulses and like beans. And so it would have included beans and grains, vegetables, like what we normally think of as vegetables, leeks, onions, carrots, turnips. They also used a lot of herbs and spices. And then they would have had a lot of fruits and breads too.
So how is there lamb? Because sometimes the kosher, they have some sort of a meat without blood, right?
Yes,
so
that's right.
Know if that's included with the diet that they have.
Yes, absolutely. But in this case, Daniel would not have been able to guarantee where the food came from and if it had already been sacrificed to idols. And so he would not have had any meat. It would not have been prepared in a kosher way, nor was it part of the food laws, depending on what meat it was. Yeah.
Okay.
So it would have, it would have been more of a vegetarian diet. Yeah, good question. And I talk about some of that in the video that I'll send you tonight.
Okay.
That's on Daniel 1. So good questions. Thanks, Remy.
Yeah, I'm just jumping in. So it's my first. Okay, thank you.
One more question I thought of, and maybe it's just clarification, but did I remember, I watched the videos a while back, but was Daniel 7 when he was brought over? He was young, right?
Yeah, he was more like 15.
Oh, okay. So then, and he died in Babylon.
He did.
And did he live, was he alive during Cyrus?
Yes.
So he was seeing the exiles get to return.
He did, but he was too old to go back. He was almost 85. So, and I don't think he physically would have been able to handle the journey back. It would have been a long way to walk. But so the very last verse of chapter 1 talks about how he was there through technically 4 different kings and 3 different empires. So that's, pretty amazing. Did that answer? Kim, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. All right. Other thoughts? Questions?
Sam, I had sorry. Go ahead.
April, go first.
I only had one quick question from your video because I did get to watch it. I subscribed, by the way. Another plug for you. It's kind of about the food. You said in your video, and then I kind of watched the other companion video, but it was talking about recipes that they were finding in the cuneiform, or however you said that.
Yes.
But you mentioned that they were Babylonian recipes. Were those recipes, would they have been more like what you would have found on the king's table, or would those have been more of, what Daniel was, choosing to eat?
That's a great question. I think a lot of them were just regular people's food. It was a lot of like soups and stews of what they found in the cuneiform tablets. They didn't call for exotic ingredients like what you would find on a king's table. Yeah, so it was basically just a stew, like a lamb stew, like what we would have today. Which is really weird to think about that. I mean, the food God created in Genesis, I mean, why would it be different? He made all the food, like it should be the same. You know what I mean? But then you think back to an ancient civilization and you're like, what? They ate garlic? But it's always been there. Thanks, April. Good question. I think we should have a cook-off, like, like a chili cook-off. I think we should make Babylonian stew cook-off. Carrie, did you have a question? Oh, Carrie, you're muted. Oh.
Sorry, that's fun. Just imagine what I said.
That's great.
Tonight, as you were talking about verse 15 and you just took us all the way to the word fat. In my thinking, it was healthy musculature and, just a good stout build for some teenage young boys. And that kind of maybe blew my image. But also what is this kind of a supernatural happening? Because I have tried to lose weight before, and you don't get skinny overnight, and just the same, you don't get fat in 10 days. So is this something that was completely a God molding for these boys?
Yeah, it definitely had to have been a miracle by God. You're right. There's no physical way that could have happened. Well, unless they were on prednisone.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Totally kidding. I have plenty of pictures of my moon face.
Speaking like someone who has had to deal with prednisone.
Oh man, but no, it had to have been a miracle by God.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'll link to a really great article by one of my favorite authors. She talks about this. She has a whole article about this.
Okay, good. Yeah, that'd be
I'll
great.
put that in the description of the video.
Okay, super.
Yeah.
The other thing I was thinking while I was reading this, in chapter 1, it talked about, I'm going to say the training that Nebuchadnezzar put them through, and the priming and the grooming. As I was reading, and I can't think of the exact examples now, but as I was reading that, I thought, is this as much mental manipulation for these Israelites as it was care? Yes, you're going to feed these captives. Yes, you're going to sustain their life for your own purpose as a king. But I don't think it was their education. There was something that I read that made me think, was it a reprogramming of these people?
It was akin to being brainwashed.
Yeah. Okay.
You think about, they go from the lowest of the low as exiles coming out of Jerusalem, all dusty, dirty, walking, and then they're brought into this gorgeous city. They're fed from the king's table. They're getting the best of everything that Babylon has to offer. So yeah, that would be part of the reconditioning.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Good observation. All right, final thoughts. Oh, any other thoughts, questions? All right, well, I hope this was fun and hopefully a little bit eye-opening for you tonight. My mind was blown with the whole translation of fat. I had no idea. So it's funny, the mental image we keep in our heads, and then we go and look at the Hebrew. Dang it. It's not what that means. Okay. You guys are fun. Thank you. That's all I have for tonight. Bye, everybody.